5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Council meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilperson Angeli, Vining,
Here.
Germaini,
Here.
Lamore,
Here.
Felder, Whitman, Mayor Clark.
Here. I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Guide our working together, give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the welfare of the residents of this community.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, next item, please.
The next item on this evening's agenda is any amendments to the agenda.
I don't believe there's any amendments. Looking to Mr. Pastou and council. No amendments this evening. Next item, please.
The next item would be citizen comments not related to an agenda item, and I have 2 letters to read into the record.
We'll start with the letters and see if there's other comments from those present here this evening.
All right. The first is from Darlene Dykeman, 222 East 2nd Street, Monroe. I'm not going to waste my time addressing council on a matter that, for all intents and purposes, has already been decided, but I do have observations that I want read into the record. I have repeatedly told city officials that a newspaper article no longer serves as notification, yet here we go again. Surprise. I can appreciate the concern that council must have regarding the loss of Detroit Edison revenue, but my first observation is that the council saw an opportunity to remove a vacant building from the rolls and then stopped thinking. Where is the need for another low-income housing project? Without comparing individual units, now individual Section 8s, Monroe has, with this announcement and the nuns opening theirs this summer, 7 low-income housing places. Chicago has 9. If council is relying on a study from those proposing this project, I have a bridge to offer. If the city paid for a study, why now when belt tightening should be the primary objective? What other options have been explored? What immediately comes to my mind is offering to the county the option of adding to their current parking lot a swap for the cost of demolition. As the author of the current parking program and longtime resident, I know of what I speak. This is page 2 of the letter. My second observation is that this is the most congested parking area in the entire city. This is where people park to pay their water bills, to pay their taxes, to obtain building permits, to pay their parking tickets, to see their probation officers, to report a crime, to obtain a divorce, to handle probate and any all other court matters, not to mention county employees as well as police and deputies who have nowhere other than the street to park. At one time, the county required over 500 parking spots per day, yet provided only 100. I see nothing to show this number has changed. Yet, with unbelievable stupidity, this council has chosen this very area to add a 50-unit low-income housing complex with absolutely no plan to accommodate the at least 150 additional parking spaces needed. In fact, council must now find over 30 spaces to pay back the county. Adding to the county's parking lot would be a baby step toward easing the problem, not adding to it. I cannot conceive of what prompted this decision. My thoughts are either insanity or fear. I see decisions made in fear as seldom having positive outcomes. Returning to the low-income housing without sarcasm, and this is page 3 of Ms. Dykeman's letter, I ask, is low income the majority of the population in Monroe? I never thought so. I also never thought that I lived in a slum or a ghetto. I've never had a cockroach or rodent problem. Other than drivers going through, there is no music blaring or gunshots. Logically, though, if needed, I could see the low-income housing in my neighborhood because I see 50% of the properties as abandoned or in disrepair. Fortunately, the taxes are low, but that also keeps us trapped, unable to sell with any real profit. With the announcement, I doubt any of us could sell now for any amount. Back to parking. I'm lucky enough to have a driveway, so unless someone parks blocking it, I can come and go. However, I generally park in the street so that I can have company or repair people. Have you even thought of the current residents who don't have driveways and have this fiasco, how this fiasco will affect them? Have you thought about increased foot traffic? Generally, that means increased petty crime and property destruction, which leads to even lower property values. My third observation is, if this is indicative of decision-making to come, I see Monroe in the beginning of a slide into bankruptcy with people leaving in droves and trickles. I hope the mayor remembers to turn off the lights. My last observation is actually a question for the Monroe Evening News. Unless they were being facetious, why would a bunch of poor people be just what the downtown needs? Again, this was a letter from Ms. Dykeman in Monroe. The second letter that was submitted to the clerk's office this evening is actually an email from Dave Swartout. Good afternoon. He wanted to send this to everyone on council, but felt that he also wanted it read into the record. I have some thoughts to share about the proposed project. I understand the questions that have been brought up. My suggestion is this, and then he has 6 bullet points. We do need this. 2, the downtown businesses need it. 3, the young professionals we want to bring here and accommodate need it. 4, let's make it work and make it a showcase for future development. The city needs it. 5, this could be just the start of other investments for our continued downtown development. 6, this is a good example for other businesses to know the city can help them forward with their projects and possibly get HUD and facade grant money along with brownfield credits. Not that long ago, I was part of a project that is now known as the Carriage House next to Firestone. While many wanted it torn down, City Council was patient and let the building department and I put together a plan to rehab it. Now it is home to Baroque Violin, Erie Bread, along with 2 other offices and 2 luxury apartments. It is one of the most popular places in the city of Monroe. Let's give investors a reason to come to our city. Thanks, Dave. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening not related to an agenda item? Other comments from those present? Seeing none, next item, please.
The next item is a presentation, item 2305, Life-Saving Recognition, Scott Smiley Fire Department.
Thank you, and Chief White, if you would please make introductions, and thank you for being here.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I have the distinct pleasure tonight of introducing a gentleman who kind of got a second chance from a group of individuals. One of those individuals being one of our firefighters. He's come here tonight to recognize him for that second chance. Mr. Dave Bebo.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Evening.
Presenting this award to Lieutenant Smiley from myself, also on behalf of the Arvada, Colorado Fire Department, where I have friends and relatives that serve on the fire department, and they have an award that they thought that Lieutenant Smiley merited for his actions relating to me. I'll read their citation. To Lieutenant Scott Smiley, on June 2nd, 2018, while participating in the Michigan Tough Mudder Race, Lieutenant Scott Smiley stopped mid-race to give life-saving actions to another participant, Dave Bebo. He had suffered a sudden death cardiac arrest at mile 6 of the event. Lieutenant Smiley, along with 5 other participants, immediately went into action performing CPR on David. Through his quick actions in reviving David, Lieutenant Smiley has earned the Phoenix Award. The award, Arvada Fire Department gives out the Phoenix Award to recognize persons who have responded to and contributed to the successful resuscitation of a victim of cardiac arrest. We know that a positive outcome is rare in these circumstances, and we proudly award Lieutenant Scott Smiley with the Phoenix Award Challenge Coin to commemorate his actions he took to save David's life, who was part of our extended family, and we are glad he is still with us. Sincerely, Scott Winberg, Arvada Fire Protection District, Arvada, Colorado.
Thank you. Very nice.
Lieutenant Smiley, on behalf of the fire department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Smiley.
Thank you. It's this is quite an honor. At the race, it's not it's built into us as firemen in the service we're in just to help. And I guess the takeaway point in this is if you see somebody that needs help, try to step up and help them because you never know what the outcome could be. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Great job.
Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is a public hearing. Item 2306, public hearing to receive and review comments on proposed ordinance 19-003 to prohibit the sale and possession of vapor and e-cigarette products by minors, and there are no comments on file in the clerk treasurer's office.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing regarding item 2306, proposed ordinance 19-003, prohibit the sale to and possession of vapor and e-cigarette products by minors. Any comments from those present here this evening for this public hearing? Any comments to be made for the public hearing? Any other comments for the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 2293, proposed ordinance 19-003, an ordinance to prohibit the sale to and possession of vapor and e-cigarette products by minors, up for its final reading.
Thank you.
Your Honor, Your Honor, I'll move that proposed ordinance number 19-003, an ordinance to prohibit the sale to and possession of vapor and e-cigarette products by minors, be placed on the floor for its final reading. Support.
There's a motion by Councilman Michaelangi, supported by Councilman Felder. Item 2293 be placed on the floor for its final reading. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Michaelangi.
Yes.
Vining.
Yes.
Yes. Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Whitman.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
Ordinance 19-003, Chapter 659, Tobacco, Article 1, Sale to and Possession by Minors. An ordinance to amend Article 1, Sale to and Possession by Minors of Chapter 659, Tobacco of the Code of the City of Monroe. The City of Monroe ordains.
Shall this ordinance pass?
Councilperson Michaelangi. Yes. Vining.
Yes.
Germaine.
Yes.
Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Whitman.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 2289, conveyance of city-owned property, 122 Glendale Court.
Mr. Pastu, has some preliminary information.
Your Honor, I'm going to have Mr. Green do a brief introduction to this item for City Council regarding the conveyance of this property at 122 Glendale Court.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jeffrey Green, Director of Community Development. The Community Development Department received a call, an inquiry from Mark Stevens, who had purchased and rehabbed the home at 118 Glendale Court. That's the home that sits right on G Drive and Glendale Court. Mr. Stevens indicated that he was interested in purchasing possibly a portion of the vacant lot 122 Glendale, which is on the agenda tonight, which is owned by the City of Monroe. His interest was in possibly constructing or installing a driveway for that particular property. That property does not have access to off-street parking. So like a number of other homes in that area, is forced to park on the street. As we began looking at it, of course, the general policy that we've followed in the city for a number of years is determining whether a vacant parcel owned by the city is essential or non-essential. And if it's considered non-essential, then the idea is to get it back on the tax rolls if we can do that and find someone that's interested. Again, Mr. Stevens had purchased the property at 118, had rehabbed the property there, and was hoping to be able to put in initially a driveway, possibly, if he had the room, even a garage at some point in the future. As we began talking with Mr. Pastu regarding this, we did send out a letter to the adjacent property owners from Mr. Pastu's office. We gave them a deadline in the letter to respond if they were interested in acquiring possibly half of the lot or the entire lot. The only response we got, again, was from Mr. Stevens, who said he was still interested in doing so and acquiring the property. With that, we did offer the property, the entire property, to him for use. Again, the idea is not to build or would restrict building a primary structure on the site. It would require the installation of a driveway. Possibly, he would now have the room to put a garage on there at some point in the future. And so we put those restrictions on, as you saw in the fact sheet tonight. We conveyed that to Mr. Stevens. He indicated that he was still interested in taking the property, would like to be able to get that property in order to improve the home at this site. So that's kind of where we got to the point tonight. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
If I may, just as a
Yes.
follow-up with it, as many of you are familiar with that street in particular, it is very, very tight, and on-street parking can sometimes be problematic, and particularly for this house not having a driveway, we thought that would provide some relief to it. I mean, long-term, to be honest with you, if we could get to a point where we could prohibit on-street parking because of the limitation of the width of the road, that would be ideal, but we think this is a good first step. And you know, in talking with, Mr. Green and Mr. Buds, is that, if the council was inclined to approve tonight, we'd hold the deed until the improvements were taking place, at which point we would convey the deed to the property owner. But clearly it'd have to be putting the driveway in first, and again, the deed restrictions associated with nothing more than accessory structure on the remaining portion of that lot.
Any questions from council? Councilman Michelangelo.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is there going to be any reversion clause in the transfer of the deed, that in the event that Mr. Stevens does not put in a driveway, at some point in time, that we have the ability to get the property gets reverted back to the city? Because it looks like to me it's a buildable lot.
Yeah, we also had in the restriction on the fact sheet that it would not, we would prohibit a primary structure going in there, understanding that we don't want to exacerbate the problem of parking there, so.
And the intent in our case is we would hold the deed until the improvement was done, providing a permit, and then at that point in time, we would release the deed to the property owner. That way, we're not finding ourselves in one of those odd circumstances where they fail to follow through on their commitment.
Okay, that's fine.
And
I understand there's a deed restriction as far as what could be there in the future beyond what,
Again, I think very limited, as Mr. Green alluded to, there will be no primary structure on that. The road infrastructure just really can't withstand it. And so we think this is a good move to try and address some of the problems the neighbors have had with on-street parking.
very good. Is there other questions from council? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Green.
thank you.
Does it require action?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that the city convey the parcel number 69-01276-000 to Mr. Stevens for $1, subject to the conditions and deed restrictions outlined by the city administrative staff.
Second. Motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Lamore, on item 2289, the conveyance of city-owned property has been explained and so noted.
I'm Mr. Stevens.
Sure. If you'd like to make a comment before we take a vote, that'd be wonderful.
Yes, that's essentially, I got the property a few months back. Again, like Mr. Green said, I fixed up the property. I put a new roof on the house. I cleaned all around the whole property. Actually, when I bought the property, didn't even realize it had an air conditioning unit until I uncovered it. Brand new one at that. So I'm just trying to, just started a business back in July of last year, buying properties. I have a property on Kailani, basically trying to make the city itself prettier, nicer, trying to take homes that are kind of run down. I've got another couple properties I'm looking at that I think that I live over in Humphrey. I've actually lived there for over 4 years. There's just so much beauty in the homes in this city. Actually, I looked at a house right across the street from the fire department. That was the first house I ever looked at in the city, just to be able to take and actually because all the woodwork, everything about the houses, all they're older homes, but they have so much to offer. And so that's basically why I kind of picked a little house on Glendale and said, oh, okay, this is a cute little project for me, and so I basically invested my hard-earned money into this house, and that's, and then I thought, well, okay, well, I don't have any parking. And so I kind of said, well, maybe I can ask the city. And so then Mr. Green I contacted the city, and then I just went through the process, and little by little until we got to today. So.
Great.
Very good. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you.
No other questions or comments? There is a motion and second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Ike
Yes.
Vining? Yes. Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 2307, consideration to approve a lease agreement with Lake Erie Transit to occupy and renovate a portion of City Hall.
Mr. Pastu, is there some additional information as we?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, contained in the fact sheet is some background with the rationale for recommendation to consider this lease agreement, along with identifying some pertinent language in the agreement itself related to that. If there's any questions, certainly be more than willing to answer those. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to pull up the floor plan for it, but just so everyone understands that the currently exists in the lobby area and in the treasurer's office area will remain the same. There won't be any changes to that, and the project area would be limited to literally the area that previously was occupied by the Monroe County Community Credit Union. So they've looked at floor plans, and if you can take a look at that, you can see that the hatched area shows that there really isn't any changes with that, and in that the area that with the proposed floor plan that they have represents the area that was previously occupied by the community, by the credit union. So, thoughts, questions, comments?
Councilman Michelangelo?
Shit. No, Michelle had a hand.
Councilwoman Jamini?
Your Honor, I wish to propose that I abstain from voting for this item because of my relationship with Lake Erie Transit.
So I'm looking at council, I see no objections to that. Understand that you'll be abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. Other comments from council? Councilman Michelangelo?
This one is from Mr. Buds. On page 2 of 8, under condition B, fixtures and condition at surrender. The fifth line from the bottom, the line starts with premises caused by such removal. You see that? Now, shouldn't the term after that, it says lessor shall repair any damage to the leased premises, shouldn't that be the leasee?
Yes, it should.
Okay.
So we don't have a line number.
No.
Just repeat that again so we have it, so we know the location for the clerk to be able to know.
It is under paragraph subletter B, titled Fixtures and Condition at Surrender.
See it.
It is the fifth line from the bottom. On that line, there is the word lessor, which should be lessee.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my other question, and this is probably more for the city administrator. I think everybody in council knows that I'm not in favor of the lease, but one of the things that I am concerned about, because it's actually an existing condition now where the transfer station is outside, is there's just maintenance, the site maintenance has to be we have to monitor that. I mean, typically anytime that you go out there and walk along the sidewalk by City Hall, it's filled with cigarette butts. And it does not look very inviting if you were somebody walking or coming to City Hall. So I'm anticipating the council's going to approve this lease. However, I think we have to be, now that we're going to have ramps and an outdoor seating area, I think there's got to be a lot more attention paid to what the exterior maintenance of this looks like all year, even during the winter time, in terms of its condition.
Yeah, there's two things with that. One is I would anticipate now that there's a facility for the patrons to come in, that any kind of material like wrappers and what have you, there's an area for its disposal. The other part is contained in the lease agreement is an allowance of $6,000 per year that we've figured is roughly what we would need to have a proportionate share for the maintenance of that site. And it escalates thereafter. So I think at that point in time that we would take probably a little stronger and more active role in the maintenance and the appearance of that going forward. So, yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilman. Other questions or comments? If not, motion would be in order.
Your Honor.
Councilman Lamore.
Yes, I make a motion that we approve the attached agreement with the noted corrections with Lake Erie Transit to lease a portion of City Hall for a transit transfer station.
There's a motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Vining on item 2307, the lease agreement with Lake Erie Transit on the occupying renovation of the City Hall for a transit transfer station, as was proposed with the amendment made on the stated. Other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Nicoangeli?
No.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Abstain.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
The next item,
I'm sorry, next item, I apologize.
that's okay. The next item is the consent agenda, and under item B, approval of payments, the amount should read $321,605.78, 321,605.78.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda? And from council, are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Any items to be pulled from those present here this evening? Seeing none, a motion would be in order. Councilman Lamore.
Make a motion that the consent agenda be approved and all its actions listed be carried out and recorded.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini. All items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, and carried out as stated. Call the roll.
Councilperson Nicoangeli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk?
I have no further items, Your Honor.
So it's council comments. It is February. Councilman Nicolangeli.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have several. The first is for those in the audience and those on TV that are listening. I would strongly recommend that if people have the opportunity, that they go to the My Monroe, or go to the city's website and subscribe to the text messaging options that we have now. I found it very helpful last week when the city had to keep backing up the garbage schedule. And because I had previously signed up, I was receiving text messages notifying me that in our neighborhood, the garbage was going to be delayed. And talking to Miss Egan, who coordinates this for the city, she indicates that there's going to be additional text messaging that gets added in the future to keep informing residents of other items that we're doing in the city. So I would just encourage people, since most folks either have an iPhone or they have an Android, they can sign up and get the text messaging directly from the city on these different events. Another issue that I have that I'd like to really refer to Vince, Mr. Pastu and Mr. Green, is that we did during the workshop, we talked about lawn mowing and specifically about the cemeteries. We have Woodlawn, and then we also have Memorial Place. What I'm concerned about is the deterioration of the monuments at Memorial Place, which are in the ground. They have been damaged by the lawn mowing pretty significantly. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity for the city to apply to the Monroe County Historical Commission for funds through the county millage program that the citizens in this community contribute to, basically to do monument restoration at Memorial Place in order to protect the remaining headstones that are there. I think very few people know that Memorial Place or Memorial Park at 7th and Monroe Street is actually a city cemetery. And if they walk through it, they can pay attention, they can see the headstones that are laying in the ground. They used to be standing up, now they've fallen over, and the lawnmowers are not doing them a favor. So if we could take a look at that, and the reason why I'm thinking of the Historical Commission is they're issuing grants through the special millage that we all voted in, and I think it would be a great opportunity to have maybe work with them on getting a grant to actually do the monument restoration. The other question, I know that Mr. Pastou is going to talk at some point at a workshop about a principal shopping district for the downtown area, but I noticed last week when we had a lot of snow on the sidewalk, if you're parallel parking downtown, it's awful hard to get over to the sidewalk because everybody pushes their snow up. And actually, it's very dangerous because there were, I stopped at a coffee shop, had to walk around until I got to a driveway. I noticed other people having to walk in the road until they could find some place to get over into the sidewalk. So I'm hoping that maybe we can discuss the need for a principal shopping district soon, at least to have it in place maybe for winter for next year for 2019 and 20. Thank you, Your Honor. Appreciate it.
Councilwoman Vining.
Thank you, Your Honor. It was difficult for me to listen to Mrs. Dykeman's letter. I'm personally in support of the building, and not because it would be for so-called poor people. It's because I would just like to see new things built and developed in this city. A couple things that stood out to me, for her to compare Chicago to Monroe, it's a false equivalency, because one housing unit in Chicago could literally be thousands of units. I don't know of 9 low-income housing units in Monroe, in the city of Monroe, but I do know that there's a lack of housing that's been proven out through the studies that we've paid to have. And for her to suggest that poor people will bring rats and roaches, I find it insulting and ignorant for her to make these type of comments. But I find that that's, it's not just the lady who wrote the letter, but that's the feeling of a lot of citizens that live in this city. And I think that might be what's slowing development in this city, because of course we want to have fair distribution of, well, not fair, but we want to have income, different income levels in the city. I understand that. But middle to low to moderate income people need a place to live. Young professionals, new families, those who choose for whatever reason not to rent, not to buy, they may prefer renting, they need a place to live. I can go to Wayne County, where I'm from, and I can see cities that are less financially stable than Monroe by a long shot, and they're still able to build and develop. The city of Inkster doesn't even have a school district, for God's sake, and they can manage to build housing for their seniors, housing for their so-called poor. I never thought as a council person that this project was specifically for so-called poor people. But even if it is, I don't see anything wrong with that. I guess I would qualify as so-called poor under Ms. Dykeman's assessment, but I invite anyone to my home. It's beautiful, it's clean, and I don't live with rats and roaches. And I am low income, well, working class, and I'm not ashamed of that. Those are the people that I advocate for. And I just thought the letter was very insulting. I don't want to call names here, but people are more important than parking. We need to see something new. When I moved here 20 years ago, I heard that there was a saying that when General Custer left, he said, "Don't build anything else until I return." And I think that some of the citizens have taken this to heart. And it's just ridiculous for the amount of money and the financial stability of this city that we over and over again refuse to want to see anything new, and we don't want to see anything developed. And I, for one, intend on supporting this if this issue comes back up, if we're not done talking about it. I just want to say that the letter was insulting and it was very ignorant, and it shows a lack of understanding in what we need in terms of new housing and new development here. When we talked about having a developer come look at the Mako site, I didn't hear all these things because it's on the east side. So nobody cares. Those people who are making these statements now wouldn't care if it was so-called across the railroad tracks. It's a beautiful design. It's small in terms of housing units, as far as I'm concerned, 50 units. And there is a need for housing. And I think we just need to see new things built in the city. I don't know. You go to the township, everywhere you look up, you see new structures going up, new developments. I don't know what the issue is that every time we come to try to build something new in the city limits, there's so much pushback against it. But I just wanted to say that letter, it shows that Mrs. Dykeman is not really clear about our housing needs here, and she is definitely not clear about how so-called poor or low-income people live. I mean, yeah, there's bad neighborhoods in any community, but you can find dirty people in all income levels. And I would suggest that she looks into the Bridges Out of Poverty class. It teaches a lot about how to look at other people and the way they think and the way they live that aren't in the same class as you. And it taught me a lot not to judge wealthy people as much as I had in the past, because it taught me how all of us in different classes approach things differently. And I would suggest that she look into that. If she calls over to MCOP, the Monroe County Opportunity Program, they can put her in touch with that curriculum. As far as I'm concerned, it will help. I would hope that it will help her. And that's all I have to say, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dramini.
First of all, I want to thank Your Honor and Council for supporting Lake Erie Transit's downtown station. And I want to congratulate all of our patrons that ride our buses, because they'll have a warm place to sit rather than sit outside in the cold like they did last week. I also want to congratulate Lieutenant Scott Smiley for his award. And if you haven't been by the new fire station, I went by there today. It is pretty impressive. It's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. And it's an entire building now, so you should drive by and take a look at it. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councilman Lamore.
Yes, Your Honor. First, I'd like to start off by congratulating Lieutenant Smiley on his award. Great award. Adding to Councilman Vining's comments regarding Spire development, I want to commend Assistant City Manager Mark Cochran for his countless hours attempting to bring this project to fruition. With that being said, I hope we did not lose an opportunity for a great infrastructure project. Projects like this are not lining up at our door. I hope we get a second chance to build this median income project, not low income, median income. That is great for upcoming professionals, and we need it. This would definitely give notice to our region, state, and nation that Monroe is open for business. Another note to our city manager, I just want to do a little follow-up on our flag poles at Veterans Park, just to see where we're at with some of those ideas. We're going to add 2 flag poles,
I think,
Coast Guard and POW MIA.
It was handed to the Parks Department, and I'll need to follow up with Ms. Lapointe to see where we're at with it. I think they had a preliminary meeting with the individuals, and so I'll follow up and report at the next meeting.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. Not so much a congratulations, but also a thank you to Lieutenant Smiley for being on scene and helping in a situation where he is able. Furthermore, it's kind of neat for me this evening to be able to vote on the LET station being put in at City Hall. This has been a long road and kind of a fight to get there, but my grandfather was part of the establishment of LET in the county, and it's just kind of cool for me to be up here and be able to add one little piece to what he started to build. I think that there is a variety of opinions regarding the development, the proposed Spire development. I think they were discussed at length on Wednesday's meeting last week. I am excited, for one, for the new development. Mark Cochran's work on this issue certainly should not be overlooked, not only for this project, but for other development projects within the community. I think that his help and efforts toward that end in developing the downtown are crucial and have really resulted in a lot of fruit being directed towards the city of Monroe. I think the exact project and the developer to do that project are still in discussion, and we'll have to explore some of those opportunities, some of which were brought up at Wednesday's meeting. I hope to talk about it in the future. And lastly, projects related to studies, and I know that this issue has come up in the past. I just want to make sure, I want to prod it and make sure it's not dead. I think that connecting the projects that are a result of the studies that the city employs both gives city staff an opportunity to show the work that they've done, show their successes, much like what Mr. Cochran has put together in the past for us, and also gives transparency and gives the opportunity for the citizens to see where their investments are going, because these must be treated like investments. So I hope for some information like that, and I'll be speaking to Mr. Cochran and the city manager in the future about that. Thank you, Your Honor, for the time.
Thank you. Councilwoman Whitman.
I too would like to congratulate Lieutenant Smiley, and I am really surprised when it comes to the project of the apartment building that we only got one letter. You know, I find that rather amazing. So I was expecting to hear more about that and people giving their input and their opinions, which is good. That helps us know what, you know, the job that we're doing and what we need to look at. So, I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, a couple comments. First, I want to recognize the Lake Erie Transit Director, Mark Jagodinsky, is here, as well as the Chairperson, Joe Liebig, who is the city's representative on the board. So welcome for being here, and through the work throughout the months plus that we have had this conversation to come to the final proposal, I think, which met a lot of the questions, maybe not all, but a lot of the questions that the annual council had and the final design. So I look forward to that project moving forward. Again, my congratulations and thanks, Lieutenant Smiley. You just don't know the day and the hour of when your services are needed. And being prepared, being trained, and having that ability to do so is critically important. And whether you're on duty or off duty in that relationship, and it doesn't mean it's always just public safety. We have many people that have taken individual classes, and I can think back to some the jogger down the path that was saved, and other, many examples over the years. So I just commend all those that have the opportunity at Life Saving. I think there's no better action and reward than the person has to save somebody else. I also want to give some recognition and thanks to the Economic Development Director and Assistant to the City Manager, Mark Cochran, on the proposed ordinance 19003 on the vape and the e-cigarettes. I think it puts us, again, as a city municipality ahead of many others, and I know that we've received many inquiries about that, asking for, how did you do that, and what's the ordinance look like? So I see other communities, whether they be townships, municipalities, or villages, moving forward in something very similar. I will be optimistic and hope that state level, that it gets a statewide proposal to get passed. To me, that is what we need in the state. But until that happens, I think you'll see communities continue to move forward and pass a similar type ordinance. So congrats to that, Mark. And a couple of the items here, the Spire developments brought up. I just want to, I've thought this through since our last, a couple meetings we've had, not just the last meeting, but a couple of them. And I really kind of think that through, and I think it's really about clarity of information to begin. While we only received 2 letters, one obviously in favor and one in opposition, I can tell you I was contacted by many people since last Wednesday asking about that. And it really, as much information as was provided, I think sometimes they get lost in a couple words that they hear and can't understand what the possibility is. And so I asked them for that, and some were in favor of the project and said it made sense because they knew people that would qualify. And unfortunately, the letter that was written and read this evening is, whether you're here or write the letter, it's an opportunity to do that. I did find it offensive at points, but the idea is you really have to be informed. And the way to be informed is to listen and also read about things. But I think there's clarity of information, and in that letter, at least 3 times the word low income was put in there. And I think at the last meeting, I brought that up. What is that definition in relation to this project? And I know that staff is working diligently to make sure the council and the public will get those numbers, but there's the other information has to come from the analysis. So I do look forward to this project coming back forward. I know there's another round that comes in October. The timeline was a little tight this time, there's no question, but I think that there's an opportunity to continue to move forward. So when you think about, really, it is about affordable medium income. In the letter also, it said how the county employs. Quite honestly, there's many county employees that would qualify to reside within this project. I think about the other young professionals in our community, maybe at the bank that's starting, or at the hospital, a radiologist, a young nurse. I could go on. There's many places in which they want to reside and walk to some of the amenities they want. And so that definition really needs to be shared with the public and I just ask everybody to kind of take a breath and listen to it as it develops, because it's not what you think when you first heard it. And unfortunately, I think that's the terms we have to get away from and get really into what the details are. And I look forward to getting that. I think about what project we had here yet tonight. What we probably should be doing is, how do we find more people like Mr. Stevens this evening? His willingness to take on a property, and yet he's turning that back into a property that we talk about, and I mentioned at the last meeting. You have to have a new development and get people to move into. And then at the same time, we have to make sure we're taking care of the other end of it, is leaving those that might need some challenge, need work. I think the comment in the letter said there's 50% of our houses are abandoned or need repair. And I think that's an exaggeration. I don't think that's what it is. Are there those that need repair? Absolutely. Mr. Stevens is an example of those that we should be championing and thanking for their active participation in improving our community. And I think there's others that also do that as well. So I think it's a full discussion that I think is coming, and I look forward to that as we move forward. The other half of that is the discussion on the parking. And I think, and I know that the manager is working forward on this, as well as Mr. Cochran and with the county. It's not just the fact of the 30 parking spaces that may be removed. The last thing we need to do is remove the buildings there and put another parking lot in. We have to manage in a comprehensive plan what the parking is, whether it be in the heart of the downtown, around this area, around the county and the city complex. But I think we also have to do and sit with our partners at the county and actually look at all the spaces that are available, not just one lot and where it might fit, where the city might make space. There's many parking lots that are also owned by the county. I think should have the same review. And if we do this comprehensively and together, I think we'll come up with a plan that meets the needs of the workers that are down here, but also the opportunity for the development like Spire development. So whether it's Spire as we move forward or the opportunities of others that may have an interest, I look forward to this coming forward yet again. And that we do move forward on some new development. The last item I have is one of the items on the council agenda, and I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Pastu that he kind of brings that back to us. I only had a brief opportunity earlier to kind of discuss that, but as we look at the CDBG and the sub-recipient agreement, I do support that. I think that's the funding that we get from the federal government that we have to take care, and we need to keep care, and it's not that we have to, it's what we should do as a community, and what the needs are from one spectrum to another. But looking at the sub-recipient agreement, it talks not only the amount, but the funding, but also it talks about the warming shelter. I know there's some transition there, warming shelter versus a homeless shelter, and I just want to make sure that we are doing our diligence as well, as we know that there's a need. We know that the need is being addressed, but how, as you look through the agreement, there's some language in here. It talks about what there's some requirements are in relation to that grant funding, because we're responsible. And it's no different than what we're doing with, I'll say, the Sawyer Homestead. End of the year, we expect to get that report back and understand the expenditure. It's no different than what we're doing with the Battlefield Foundation. There's some expectations of what they're going to report back. So I know council's reviewed the material, but I'm asking Mr. Pastu to go through there, because one of the things it says at the end of the year, they received a report back. Now, that may go directly to HUD or the federal agency, but we will be the ones that will be asked about that as well as a council and as a city. And we did provide funding last year, and I think it was a good decision to do that. But I asked Mr. Pastu to just check on that report from last year, and we are in a little bit of transition, as we know, because Matt Wallace, congrats to Matt, I guess. I hate to see him leave, but he is departing from our city and moving on to a township in his role as a planner there. He's the one that managed those projects with us, so hopefully before he leaves, we'll get that. And if he's left, I know he'll be able to tell us where to find those information. I think it's important for council, so we're evaluating all the projects that we provide funding to, that we know what the outcomes are, so we continue to support that. Not just now, but in the future as well. So in that subrecipient agreement, there's just some things that are outlined, just as we've talked about. ALCC was another one. I know we kind of, as Councilwoman Vine and I have chatted about, it's taken some time to get there, but we've put things in place to make sure we know and council knows, and the board, that we're being a partner in this. So I look forward to, as that goes through, just to kind of have a review on that. So those are my comments. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I just have one comment this evening. Property taxes are due next week in the city of Monroe. They're due on Thursday, the 14th. And in hopes that this will help alleviate some of the burden, I'm going to be extending the hours for the treasurer's office. We will be open from 8 until 6 p.m. Monday, February 11th through Thursday, February 14th. It's something I've wanted to do for a couple of years, and like a lot of things, it takes time and patience, and I'm finally able to offer that service. So you can still pay your property taxes by mail or the drop box that we have for your convenience, but I'm hoping that for those folks who can't get here before we normally close, this will provide you the opportunity when you need counter service or need to interact with a treasurer staff person. We'll be glad to answer your questions. So we will be here Monday through Thursday from 8 until 6. We do not close for lunch ever, and that will continue, of course, this week. So we're there to help you out.
Thank you. Thanks. Mr. Pestu, any comments this evening?
Just to follow up, if you will, on the redevelopment of the current fire station and the Spire development is, in light of where we're at, we're going to be putting internally, I think, a proposal request out there. Some of it is, well, we're very supportive of the project. We do think that for addressing some of the concerns that may be out there regarding that for it to stand on its own and, earn its own merits, that's probably the best way to go. So we're going to put something, a fairly tight scheduled for that, and I'll actually probably have it here for council to look at next meeting for that. And be honest with you, they were very good when we talked with them the next day. Mr. Cochran and I, while disappointed, certainly it almost reinforced they're a good group of folks to work with. And so the other thing in that interim is we've got some perception issues regarding definitions. We think we may be close to having resolved what that missing middle is from an architectural standpoint, but clearly we've got to address the perception as to what's low income and what's rent restricted income. There's some issues there, and I think over time we need to get to that as part of the evaluation to address that. So that'll be on administration to work on that so that not only the council but also the broader community is informed as to what that is. So that's the only thing I have for tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any comments from those present here this evening? Any final comments from those present? Seeing none, a motion will be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder, to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Nicoangeli?
Yes.
Harding? Jermaine?
Yes.
Wilmore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes, thank you.